welcome to the Marriage Adventure Podcast. We're your hosts, Daniel and Bonnie, and we're glad that you're with us today.
So glad.
Yep. So, hope you're having a good start to your week if you're listening to us on the day this drops on a Monday. And I gotta say, it's just
You sound kind of down.
I know, and maybe it's okay. So, transparency here. I'm working on putting together tax stuff.
Ugh.
I know. It's just, April 15th is around the corner. And
You know why you do that?
Yes, I do.
Because we'd be in jail if I had to do it.
I do know why I do it. But it's not fun. I do it out of default because I might be a little better at it than you are.
But not because you love it or you think you're good at it?
No. I just, ugh. It's not fun.
You are good at it, but you don't like it. I get it.
It's just well, and for us in ministry, we have to keep up with, because of just certain laws or whatever, we keep up with all of our receipts, and then we have to capture those and come up with a total.
We're more self-employed.
Yeah, and so, and let's just say the last year we've got a lot of receipts, and so just
spent so much money.
Just so many.
In the barn that we're sitting in.
Yes, and I'm thankful for it. But right now I'm just like, my life would be easier if we could just stop spending money and collecting receipts. So, but yeah, it's just that, the mundane of going through receipt after receipt and just, it's just a lot. It's just, I'm tired.
You just invalidated every bookkeeper's life that's listening to this.
No, they're great. No, I gave them value.
They love it.
They hire. If I could afford to hire one of them, life would be even better. But I mean, they are so valuable, and I don't know how they do what they do. Everybody's gifted in their thing, and that's just not mine. So I did not invalidate. I totally appreciate what they do.
Yes,
so
no kidding. Yeah. I think it's the monotony of it.
It is. I'm just sitting there and going through receipt after receipt, and hey, great segue. That's kind of what we're talking about. Well, it is what we're talking about today.
True.
Yeah, it's what we're talking about today.
Every time we go in and we speak to a church or to a group of married couples, I don't want to say every time. That's probably
frequently.
Yes, but it is frequently. Frequently. We'll ask them, words are very tough. We'll ask them this question, and the question is, why can't we see what God is doing? If God's created us to live on mission, if He's created us for adventure, why can't we see what He's doing all around us, or hear His voice, or sense what He's doing? And they start listing this list of stuff, and this is kind of dovetails into our conversation on the last episode about pruning. But one guy a couple weeks ago said, truthfully, I mean, there was 100 couples there, or I don't know, 70 couples. He said, truthfully, it's the mundane. He said, I get up every morning and I do this, and then I go to work, and then when I get home from work, the next 5 hours is this and this and this, and then we get ready and the kids go to bed, and then we binge watch something, and then I look at social as I lay in bed, and then I go to sleep, and then I wake up the next morning, and it's the same thing.
Do it all over again.
And it's the mundane. It's over and over and over.
It's like a hamster on a wheel. It's like you're on that treadmill, that constant, or even on a treadmill, because you're running, but you're going nowhere. You're not, and you feel like you're not accomplishing anything, and then you live for the weekends, and you get to the weekend, and it's even crazier.
Busier than the week.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we said this on the last episode. How awesome is it if weekend plans get canceled? Like just now, just before we hit the record button, and we had something tomorrow night, you said, and I gave you this face like, and then you got a rained out notice, and we're like, yay! So it's this monotony of over and over and over.
Yeah.
And yet we call this the marriage adventure. My men's group, we're reading the book. I've never read it, but it's been out for 30 years, The Wild at Heart.
Shame on you.
I know.
You've had it for all that time.
And I've never seen Braveheart. Can you believe? Am I a man? I know. And so,
okay.
So I finally
Weekend
was
assignment.
like, I know. I was like, okay, I should probably read this book. So let's do this in our men's group.
Mm-hmm.
And the men are loving it. But what the book's talking about, it's funny because I've never read it, but there's a lot of similarities in the first half of our book and what he's talking about when he goes back to when God created Adam and when he created Eve. And we talk about in the book that God put him on this grand assignment.
Yeah.
And that's the same thing he's talking about. And he created them. He created us for adventure and for mission. And yet we live this life of this monotony.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, why? Why do we do that? And so how do we mitigate the mundane, this monotony? That's what we're going to talk about. But first, we do need to have a little fun.
So we call this Stupid Fun Facts. And I'm going to tell you a few things that you probably never thought about before. And they're really stupid, but they're kind of fun. You ready?
All
right. The only domestic animal not mentioned in the Bible is the cat.
I knew it. I knew it.
I know. Uh-huh.
I knew it.
Right. So
not a cat person.
You'll appreciate this because of music, but the housefly hums in the middle octave key of F.
Really?
Really.
It is interesting. That's not stupid at all.
No, that's interesting, right? So tigers have striped skin, not just striped fur.
I've heard that.
I had not heard that.
So if you shave them,
they're still striped.
Still striped. That's interesting.
Mm-hmm. Here's one.
These are not stupid, Bonnie. These are very interesting.
Well, I said stupid fun facts. They're fun too. Some of them are interesting and fun. So, did you know that it's impossible to sneeze with your eyes open?
No, your brains will blow out. That's what we always heard as a kid.
Your eyeballs will pop out.
Your eyeballs will pop out. Not your brains. Your eyeballs will pop out of your head if you sneeze with your eyes open.
Yep. Well, that's apparently it's impossible. So hummingbirds.
Oh, it's impossible. I thought you said it was possible.
No, it's impossible.
Yeah, I agree because your eyeballs
with your eye. Yep. Okay.
One more.
So hummingbirds are the only animals that can fly backwards.
Wow.
Yep.
All right, that's very useful knowledge.
Okay, I got one more for you. We'll close with this one. It's kind of gross. A cockroach will live 9 days without its head before it starves to death.
Oh, really?
I don't know.
So, like, its head's only use is to eat.
Yep, but then
because it'll starve to death.
Yep.
So if it could eat another way, it could live forever without its head?
Apparently.
What a great one to end on.
Yep.
That's nasty. All right, so we're talking about the monotony of life, and this is the Marriage Adventure podcast. And why is it that we're not experiencing more adventure, more fun, more mission, more passion in our life? God has written things on our heart to do and missions to live on, but yet we get in this cycle of getting up and doing this and going to work. And then most of the population just does not enjoy their job. And then they come home and the whole family goes 5 different directions for activities, whatever they are. Yeah. And then you binge watch a program and then you go to bed. And in between you're scrolling vertical videos on your phone all day, just this habitual scrolling. And it's this monotony of life. And the last thing we're thinking of is adventure. The last thing we're thinking of is purpose. And so while we can't totally escape the responsibilities of life, work, school, different things like that, we can mitigate the mundane and inject some breath and some life into our marriage relationship and into our family relationship. So, do you think that God has created us for mission?
Absolutely. I mean, if you look in Genesis, you see at creation, God created them male and female, and he created Adam. And first of all, and he gave him this big job, and he named all the animals, and then there was no suitable helper, and then he made Eve, and he said, "Hey guys, I've got this huge, gigantic mission for you. you're gonna rule over the earth and subdue the animals, and there'll be a fear of them for you, but you're gonna take care of this earth.
Mm-hmm.
You're gonna reproduce yourselves, and
Mm-hmm.
that's huge. That's a huge mission, and I believe God put us together. I believe Adam had a mission even before he was married, but then God gave him Eve, and she had a mission, and they came together, and they were able to accomplish more with a unified heart towards mission. And yeah, I think he created us with mission.
So I think that's one of the biggest ways we can mitigate the mundane or the monotony of life is to interject mission into wherever we are and whatever we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
God didn't put you in the place you are in the season you're in for no reason.
Right.
And I love how we moved here a year and a half ago to this community, and instantly, Bonnie, you started this Rydell Ladies Bible Study, and you developed friends, and I see you thriving in this new community, new people, new life, and I think that's because you've interjected mission into wherever you are.
Yeah.
And I think that's one way that we can mitigate the mundane in our life. And so what we're saying is I'm not saying God is telling you, hey, you need to quit your job. You need to...
Or start a Bible study.
Or start a Bible study or drop out of everything. Last week we talked about pruning.
Yeah.
And there are some things that we need to prune away from our life. But sometimes we don't need to prune. We just need to realize why we're there.
Mm-hmm. Maybe it doesn't mean that we stop the activity.
Right.
It's just God has us here for a reason, and we need to find what that is. And I think God's called all believers to a mission. And in the beginning, He said, be fruitful and multiply, like physically, but also spiritually, so that I can have a relationship with more people. But Jesus reinstituted that with the Great Commission.
Yeah.
I mean,
Genesis 28, 19 and 20. 19. Gosh, words. What did Jesus tell us?
Oh, and that would be Matthew, right?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. That's right. I'm looking at the wrong one.
Yep.
The wrong one. But what did Jesus say in there? He said, therefore, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I've taught you. That's our mission. To go into all the world and baptize and disciple people. So
that takes the mundane out of life.
Man, it does. It changes even at work, you think about it, it changes the relationship. Yeah, it changes the relationships of your kids' activities.
Yeah.
Because you're surrounded by people on the bleachers or people in the chairs around you that don't know Jesus.
Yeah.
And now you're living on mission. Sometimes if we're looking at it from the work perspective, though, sometimes God doesn't want you to leave where you are, but the job just is not being performed in a way that meets, that coincides with the giftings or the passions He's put on your heart. So maybe it's another place within, another seat on the bus within that particular company.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's another company, or maybe it's another, industry altogether. But if you interject mission in there, man, it mitigates the mundane right away.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right away. How have we seen that in our life?
Gracious, we've seen it in so many different ways, and I think it just, in every home we've lived in, I think God's helped us identify these are the people that you need to be sharing with, that are close to you in your circle. But I think it was only in the last few years that we've realized that's not just in our neighborhood. It goes beyond that. It goes into activities, whether it's baseball. Doing a Bible study with ladies at a ball field, or or our neighbor, our closest neighbor to us. We, you get to know them, or in whatever season you're in. Hopefully you were working at church, so hopefully you weren't sharing Jesus having to share Jesus with your staff. Yeah. But there's mission involved in that. Even it might not even be that you're sharing the gospel. Maybe it's just providing, being a shoulder for someone who in need to come in and talk to or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But if our eyes are open to it, if we open our eyes and are willing for God to show us, He'll show us the mission in any little thing we're involved in.
Mm-hmm.
Even parenting might be the only people I might see for days are my kids.
Mm-hmm.
But there's got to be mission in that, or talk about mundane.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when we had toddlers, if you don't have mission to that and know why you're called to that, that's an 18-year mundane. Mm-hmm. If you don't have mission with it and understand your calling as a parent.
Yeah, because there's not every day's exciting.
No, nor accolades involved in that. You don't get.
There's not trophies for Parent of the Year.
Mm-mm.
There should be though, and I think you should get it.
You're so sweet.
Yes, interject mission into it. Here's the second way I think, and maybe you just need permission. And if this is what you need, I'm giving it to you right now, and you can blame it on me. Not only do we need to interject mission, but you may need to just go against the flow. We get in the mundane because it's what everybody else is doing, and it's just what you do, isn't it? Our society is set up a certain way, and especially depending on where you live, the region you live in, where you settle, that it's set up a certain way. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you might just be doing something because
everybody's doing it.
Everybody's doing it, or you don't have permission to do something a different way, or maybe you don't have a dream that's big enough to get you to do something a different way.
Wow.
We would have never sold our life. I mean, we just changed our life 2 years ago, a year and a half ago. We said the other night, you said our life is, we were leaving Waffle House. Praise the Lord for Waffle House. And you said our life is completely different now.
Oh, everything.
It is. Besides our church and those relationships, everything about our life is different.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because God put a dream on our heart. God gave us a vision and a mission, and we prayed for that.
Yeah.
And that's why we moved here. Mm-hmm. But maybe if you're listening today, maybe you need permission to do things differently, to go against the flow. So often we get trapped in that mundane because we feel like we need to structure our lives that way that everybody else is. For example, when I moved to the suburbs, I have to do X, Y, and Z. I have to get involved in this, and this because this is what you do. Or that's the way I grew up. Mm-hmm. And it's the only way I know.
Oh, yeah.
But what if you could structure it differently? What if you could sell the house and move to live on? And sometimes you've got to do that to live on mission, going back to number one.
Yeah.
If God's calling you to a mission, sometimes it's to just live on mission where you already are. Mm-hmm. But man, sometimes it's to take up the tent stakes and fold up the tent and go. And I know a couple of guys that's left their 20-year corporate jobs to, one guy left his job to go to seminary, to go into the ministry. He had no job out there, but he went to seminary to be obedient. And then God opened up the job. Yeah. And then I know another guy that left his 20-year corporate job to start a nonprofit because he had a burden on his heart. And so he started this nonprofit. In the first 3 years, he was fundraising, which is not why he started the nonprofit. So you're not even able to really live out your mission for the first 2 or 3 years. But he just got a massive grant that's going to allow him now to do his mission.
Wow.
And what if they had stuck to you just can't do that?
Sure. Well, and it's not even necessarily in a job change or a move. Sometimes people want to look at you and tell you, why are you parenting that way? Mm-hmm. Because there's some things we do as parents, people think we're crazy. There's some things, even this last year, we've made some changes around here, and it's not what I ever thought I would do. And some of those things, we have to go against sometimes the flow of what we've said we won't do. there are times we have to say.
You mean like you say, "I'll never homeschool," and 3 days later, God says you're homeschooling?
Yeah. Well, and earlier, even before that, we said we'll never do travel ball, and for a few seasons, we did travel ball because God
said,
and He gave us a mission for it. And so there are things that
we're not anymore, but we do.
No, but sometimes we can be our own. We can write this script and feel like we have to stick to it because, if I go against what I said, I'm going to have to eat crow with this, or I'll have to go back on my word on this. But if God's telling you to do something, you better be willing to do it, or you're going to be stuck in some misery.
So besides just it's the only way I know, or it's what everybody else is doing, what keeps us from going against the flow and just jumping out there?
I think fear.
Yeah.
Fear of...
That was the answer I was going for. That's what I wanted to say.
We didn't talk about that. But there's fear of, what if I fail at this? And everybody's like, see, I told you. You shouldn't do that. There's the fear of, I won't be any good at that. Or the fear of, what if maybe God didn't really call me to that. It was just an idea I had and I fail and I fall on my face, or I think there are also times, and I'm going to be honest, sometimes we say, God told me to do something, and that's just our reasoning so we don't get argued with, but it wasn't God. But then there's sometimes we know for sure God's leading us to do this, but we have this fear, but what if God doesn't come through? So we almost feel like we got to protect God.
I lived in that for this past year.
Right.
God had put this mission on our heart to do the marriage adventure and to help couples. And some of the stuff we're doing now, but some of the stuff we're rolling out. And it was my heart's desire and passion. And I'm sitting here spending everything we have in the bank.
That's all the receipts.
That's all the expenditures. Renovating this property, and all I had was a vision.
Yeah.
And I'd love to, that sounds so...
romantic.
Wow, that's such a romantic notion. Good for you, Daniel. No, heck no. I was angry. I don't know if I was angry at the Lord. I was frustrated. I'll say that. I was frustrated with Him, because I knew He knew what He was doing, and I knew He'd work it out. But in that moment, could you just let me know anything?
Sure.
Give me something. And but I lived in that. God, I know what I want to do. I know what I think you want me to do. But is this just my flesh?
Yeah.
Or is this you?
Yeah.
And
because it's certainly going against the flow. I mean, you had recently even said people would be crazy to leave this place.
Oh my gosh. I mean, I'd said 1,000,000 times, this is the greatest church to work at.
Yep.
And I still believe it. If you're working at a church, that's the best one to work at. And we had said in our senior leadership meetings, like, I want to tell these young guys working with us, just look around. You're not finding this in a lot of places.
No. So it was definitely...
And then I was sitting in comfort, too. A great salary, great insurance. It was easy, and it shouldn't have been.
So going against the flow, though,
there was a reason it was easy. Yes. It was because God was done with me. It shouldn't have been easy.
And I'll say that I'll say most of the time God does call us to go against the flow. And we've been watching the Chosen series, and I have this picture. If you've not watched it, it's great series. It's not 100%. It's loosely. It's based on the Bible, but it's not word for word.
They add story.
Yes, they add story.
We don't get a script of Jesus.
Correct, but I love the intro, and there are so many intros of things that I skip through, but I kind of like watching that intro because it's this picture of this one fish swimming against all the others, and as it's swimming, it bumps up against all these fish, and every now and then one of those fish will be affected, and it will switch course too. And
that's interesting. I've never picked up on that.
And so it's really cool that sometimes when we go against the flow, it's because God's calling us to go against the flow, and you never know who you will influence by switching direction and going God's way. That He's calling you, because you may bump up against someone you never would have if you continued going with the flow, and you may impact their life in a way that you never would have.
Yeah.
And it's really important to go against the flow if God's calling you to.
And I think there is a kudos to a younger generation than us. We're Gen Xers.
Mm-hmm.
But you get some of the younger millennials.
Mm-hmm.
And I was talking to a friend the other day. We said that I was just saying there's so many unique ways to make a living now
Mm-hmm.
that you just used to didn't have. And
Used
he's
to.
used to.
Used to. That's a Southern word.
It's a word, right? And he said, it's interesting because people say the 20-somethings right now don't want to work.
Mm.
And maybe there's some. That's probably amongst all generations. Amongst is another good word. He said, but they say that these 20-somethings don't want to work. They want to work. They just don't want to work in the traditional office setting that we've always known. They want to work and make money in creative ways.
Yeah.
And be able to live life the way they want to or the way they feel they need to, or live on mission. And so that's very interesting that they're probably more apt to say, hey, I'm going to do it a different way.
Yeah.
Now, you're also in your 20s.
Yeah.
Life was a lot different. We did that in our early 20s. Our first 10 years of marriage, we were on the road. But we didn't have kids.
No, how many times in the last year and a half have you said it was so different living by faith in our 20s when it was just us with no overhead? I think that's the majority of our listeners. They're in a place, maybe you're in a place in your life where you're like, I feel bound to the mundane because I've created this world around me now that going against the flow would be too costly.
Yeah.
So where do we go from there?
I always heard this: keep your walking weight light.
Yeah.
So if you like to hike or anything like that, whether it's long treks or day hike, you always want to pack your bags light.
Mm-hmm.
You don't take clothes for every day. You take a pair of pants, the ones you wore. You take a couple changes of shirts. You wear dirty clothes, right? Because, man, a couple of days with that pack on, you're not going to go as far. You're not going to go as fast. You're going to be hurting. And so you want to keep your walking weight low. And that's the same when it goes to our finances. Mm-hmm. Keep your walking weight low, meaning stay out of debt.
Yeah.
Don't have a house payment bigger than you can afford. Keep your expenses low. If you live well below your means, guess what? Well, now I'm shiftier. Now I can be more apt to change and go with where God's telling me to do this. Mm-hmm. I need to do it. God's telling me to invest my money here. Well, I can't because I got it so wrapped up in this kind of payment or this kind of payment or this monthly. Oh my gosh, now it's not just payment. Now it's monthly subscriptions.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, in the past 10 years, now monthly subscriptions take all your money.
Oh, you got to watch those bad boys too. You'll look down and you'll be like, 6 months I've been paying this thing. I didn't know I was paying this.
Literally, I was looking at a QR code, making a QR code. Well, now they want me to subscribe and monthly pay $14 a month to make QR codes. Really? So you got to watch those things. So keep all your subscriptions, keep your debt, keep your payments, keep all of that really low, because if you do, well, now guess what? Now I can live like nobody else does. Mm-hmm. That's the old Dave Ramsey thing. Mm-hmm. Live like nobody else does now, so one day you can live like nobody else does. Yeah. And now I can do life differently. And now I can live on mission because I'm not just working and living to support all the stuff I have to pay for.
Yeah, nothing will make you feel like you're stuck in the mundane, like having to make payment after payment, pay taxes, and die.
Yeah, and make payment for something you don't even own anymore.
Yeah.
That car that you couldn't have afforded, and you sold it 3 years ago, but you're upside down on it, so you still have to make payments. I mean, that's just awful.
Yeah. Talk about mundane.
Yeah. So those are just some ideas. If you're stuck in the mundane and you want to just interject your mission and adventure back into your life, back into your marriage, back in your relationship, sometimes we have to rethink how we've set up life and interject mission. Don't be afraid to go against the flow and keep your walking weight low so you can do those other two things.
That's good.
Yeah, that's good. So thanks so much for joining us on the podcast today. And we love each time we're with you guys. And if you love this podcast, share it with your friends. And then you can follow us on Facebook and Instagram and at The Marriage Adventure. You guys have a great, great week. We are